I'm working on bringing you all a series of historic Detroit cemetery videos, and I wanted to start with the first one I explored this weekend while we finally had a little bit of spring weather. Elmwood Cemetery. Elmwood was established in 1846, making it one of the oldest and most historically important places in Detroit. It covers about 86 acres, and even though it's only a couple miles from downtown, when you walk through it, it feels like you've stepped into a completely different landscape. In fact, as soon as I pulled through the gate, I started to wonder what Detroit's original landscape looked like. So when I got back home, I did a little bit of research, and it turns out Detroit's landscape prior to being graded and leveled and urbanized looked just like Elmwood. Swells, hills, valleys, and wooded groves, and it's absolutely stunning and wild to think that the city was like this at one point. Part of what makes Elmwood so special is the land itself. Before Detroit became known as the city we know it today, this area was a part of what we call ribbon farms. These are long, narrow farms that stretch inland from the Detroit River. When the people who founded Elmwood first saw the property, they were drawn to it because of its natural beauty and a small creek that wound through the land. That creek was a part of a historic waterway known as Bloody Run, whose name is fitting considering the bloody history of it. The name comes from an event that happened in 1763 during Chief Pontiac's war against the British. In the battle, Native American forces ambushed British troops who were attempting to attack Pontiac's camp. According to historical accounts, so many soldiers died in the fighting that the nearby creek was said to have run red, which is how it got the name Bloody Run. Today, Elmwood is actually the only place in Detroit where this historic waterway can still be seen above ground. In most other parts of the city, the creek was buried long ago, and it now flows underground through Detroit's sewer system. When you walk through Elmwood Cemetery, you are walking through 300 years of history. It's not just a cemetery, it's really a piece of Detroit's original landscape. Elmwood is also known for its architecture and artwork. The cemetery includes an 1850s Gothic chapel, an ornate gatehouse from the 1870s, and several mausoleums built in different eras. Throughout the grounds, you'll find sculptures and memorials created by well known artists and architects, which makes the cemetery feel almost like an outdoor art gallery. Far beyond the design and landscape is the cultural importance that Elmwood plays in Detroit. It's one of the earliest racially integrated cemeteries in Michigan, and many people buried here played important roles in the fight for freedom and civil rights. Because of those connections, Elmwood was officially recognized in 2019 by the National Park Service as a part of the National Network to Freedom, which highlights sites connected to the Underground Railroad. Another historic feature on the property is Michigan's oldest Jewish cemetery, which belongs to Temple Beth El and sits within the Elmwood grounds. Elmwood was also Detroit's first example of what was known in the 1800s as a rural cemetery. At the time, cities were becoming quite crowded and industrialized, so the cemeteries were designed intentionally to feel like peaceful retreats where people could walk, reflect, and spend time outdoors. In fact, Elmwood was functioning as a kind of public green space decades before Detroit established Belle Isle as a park. And in 1890, the cemetery's trustees even invited renowned landscape architect Frederick Law Olmsted, the same guy who designed Central Park, to visit and recommend ways to preserve the natural character of the grounds. His advice focused on protecting the trees, the terrain, the quiet atmosphere, so that people had a place of reflection in the middle of a noisy city. And more than a century later, that idea still holds true because when you enter Elmwood, you immediately feel at peace. Elmwood remains an active cemetery today, so if you go and visit it, please be respectful. It's also one of the most fascinating places to explore Detroit's history, where nature and architecture and stories from more than 3 centuries all come together in one stunning landscape.